You know what I love? I love brute force. I love heavyweight boxers. Rottweilers. Sledgehammers. 427 cubic inch big block Fords. And in that same breath comes the battleship. I love battleships so much that I actually own more battleships than 90% of the countries on Earth. In fact, than every country on Earth besides the United States, who has 8, and Japan, who has half of a pre-dreadnought. It's actually kind of a bummer. I'm not going to do a video on that right now. Eventually, probably I will, but, you know. Now, normally, we would be going out on some sort of field trip, going to look at something cool, get in trouble for trespassing, whatever the case. Today, I'm just kind of hanging out at the house. So instead of field trip today, today's show and tell. And I am showing the USS Texas. Right here. Pretty cool. If you really look, you can see it says BB-35. It's battleship number. And then it's got this waterproof coating that they did to try to prevent some of the rust while she was in her little storage place. Here's a brief timeline of the USS Texas. She was ordered in 1910. She was laid down in 1911. She was launched in 1912, I think, is when they put the hole in the ocean. And then 1914 is when she was commissioned to the US Navy and started to be a gangster. She was a New York class super dreadnought. So before this, you had dreadnoughts, which were the badasses of the seas. They were the heavyweight boxers. They were the Mike Tysons and the Evander Holyfields out there on the ocean just looking for a fight, right? And then the United States was like, hello, limeys. I'd like to introduce you to Texas or New York. She was the pinnacle of military naval technology at the time. Nothing could touch her. She had, I believe, 10 14-inch guns, which is asinine, right? That was just more find out than the world had fuck around, which is why she didn't see any action in World War I. But in World War II, there were some things that happened, right? Notably, and I'll play some footage, she was at Normandy and she was shelling the beaches, making the Germans regret the day that they fucking tried to talk to Mexico behind our backs. Don't ever do that. I want to abide by that. Although I do love German beer and Mexico beer. Could have been great. World War II, the USS Texas would earn 5 battle stars. It would get a battle star in Normandy on the invasion, and I think a lot of people know the story, so I'll just touch on it briefly, where she would flood her torpedo tubes to get the right Kentucky windage to lob fucking 14-inch shells at Nazis that were also trying to shell her back. Yeah, that's pretty cool. So it got a battle star for the invasion of Normandy. It got another battle star for Northern Africa. It got another battle star for Southern France at a later date. It got 2 battle stars in Japan, or in the Pacific Theater rather, at Iwo Jima and Okinawa. Sorry, I had to look at my notes. And then the war ends. The Texas is out of violence to dispense, or more, the world is out of a need for that level of violence for that state and time. When you're getting retired in the 1940s, the late 1940s, after the advent of nuclear weaponry, retirement can be pretty scary. Take the USS Nevada and some other ships. They were taken out to the Bikini Atolls and they were just nuked several times and it still didn't sink. And so they had to shoot it with a battleship to finally get it to accept its fate and sink to the bottom. So this footage right here is the actual footage of the first nuclear test that the Nevada survived. Look at that. If you look close, you can see all the little dots down there.
That's the ship. So this is the second test right here. Survived the first test. This is the second nuclear weapon the USS Nevada survived. Directly, just straight on. One of them was dropped from a plane. One of them was like a subsurface detonation. This one is the Nevada after the nuclear test. So this is a state of her after 2 tests. Look close. There should be a Sherman on the deck of that somewhere. I don't know where. Look at that. That's crazy. Like, it just leaves you in awe. Like, 1, the power of a nuclear weapon, and 2, the durability of these battleships is insane. This footage, again, real footage, actually the Nevada, is after it survived 2 nuclear tests. They're like, well, now it's irradiated. We can't keep it. We have no use for it. I guess we'll test out our newer battleship's long-range aiming system and stuff. So they just had its younger siblings shoot at it until ultimately it succumbed to the ocean and lived on the bottom forever. I think you can actually dive this at the Bikini Atolls. Bikini Atoll, singular, whatever. But yeah, little side tangent, really cool piece of battleship history. Also, the Nevada survived Pearl Harbor, kind of. I mean, it didn't do too great in Pearl Harbor, but they were able to fix it and put it back in the fight, which is pretty cool.
Tangent. What the rest of the world did after World War II, right? The rest of the world was like, oh, we're gonna melt our ships down and turn them back into things. Warspite. R.I.P. Warspite. This is the one non-American vessel that I just love, and if I could have saved any other battleship from anywhere in the world, it would have been Warspite, okay? But the disrespect that the fucking Europeans have for battleships knows no bounds. So you know when you do construction and you dig a trench and you lay a piece of steel over that trench so cars can go over the trench before you fill it in and not fall in the hole. Well, they cut Warspite up and they turned it into fucking glorified manhole covers that are still used to this day. And that is despicable. I hate that. There's also a huge piece of her belt armor somewhere at like some salvage yard or something. I've seen pictures of it. What you guys did to Warspite is unforgivable, right? The USS Texas didn't want any of that. The USS Texas instead was adopted as a museum ship and preserved so that the veterans of that ship and the citizens of this great country could look at the once pinnacle of battleship technology for generations to come. And we are incredibly thankful for that. Tangent. Now, that half a Japanese ship we were talking about, I don't know how to pronounce it. It's Mikasa, which to me, a dirty American that failed Spanish 3 years in a row, is Mikasa. And Mikasa is Tsukasa, which makes sense because it was built by the British for the Imperial Japanese Navy in the late 1890s, right? It still exists, kinda. So after World War I, there was like the Washington Naval Treaties or what have you, okay? I'm not a history teacher, so, fuck you. But we basically said the same thing we said after World War II, which was, we're going to take away all your cool shit because you guys are being a problem. So we told them, no more of this boat. And they said, well, we'd like to keep the boat. Can we have it as a museum? To which we said, sure, we like museums. Here you go. Cut to, it saw no action in World War II, I don't think, because 1890, no matter how good of a ship you build in 1890, by 1941 or 1938 or whenever you start cuddling China, right? It's just obsolete. So, sat out World War II, 45 comes around, and they're like, hey, this ship is in a horrible state of disrepair. We would like to replace it, and we'd like to do some maintenance or whatever on it. Well, again, they were very bad. We'd taken away all their shit. So we said, sure, you can restore this ship, but it cannot be even close to viable as a warship ever again. So what did they do? They filled the hole with concrete. They concreted up around the sides, and they fucking ruined it. Ships float, right? That's what they do. If your ship can't float, it's not a fucking ship. It breaks my heart what they did to it. It is the oldest surviving battleship that's not a manhole cover, a Toyota, or a fucking reef. It should float. I'm mad about this. Here's a list of battleships that are still afloat, all right? Look for similarities here. The New Jersey, the Texas, the Massachusetts, and the Alabama. Do you notice anything similar between those? You've also got the Wisconsin, the Missouri, North Carolina, and Iowa. Now, for my friends out there that don't have high-level pattern recognition like some of my other friends, I'll tell you, those are all United States states. Notice on this list you didn't hear a Bismarck. Or a Yamamoto. Or, and I hesitate to say the name because RIP, a Prince of Wales.
Fuck off! That's what you can do.
There's one country that kind of just perfected the technology. Again, I would just like to remind you guys, and I'll drop the links in the description of this video. You can purchase a piece of this battleship from the USS Texas organization and help preserve it so some other YouTube dork 100 years from now can make a similar video to mine. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Come back next time. We'll go on a field trip and see if we can't get kidnapped by the Skull Valley band of Go Shoots, as happened last month to another unfortunate fellow.